In this video today, I'm going to go through 6 job interview questions that every student should be prepared for. Now, I've already got plenty of videos on my channel which speaks about interview preparation for specific roles. Examples of this include strength and conditioning and sports nutrition. And what I recommend you do is click on subscribe in the bottom right corner to keep up to date with this content. But why should you know about these 6 questions today? What's the point of these questions? Why should you prepare for them? Well, the reason is every interview I've had in the past 10 years has contained at least one of these questions. Not just sports science, but hospitality, retail, all sorts of different roles I've gone for. At least one of these questions has come up. And secondly, these are the simple questions. And if you start slipping up on these, it doesn't set a very good precedent for the rest of the interview. I'll start with the first question, or the first statement. Tell us about yourself. And this is an icebreaker, typically the first question you may have in an interview. And what you want to do is talk about your passion for the relevant role. And where did this passion originate from? What you don't want to do is speak about general hobbies and interests, even though it could sound like the question is about that. So to give you some examples, let's say this is about strength and conditioning. You might say, well, my passion for sports science started in 2017. I undertook my BSc in sports science. Following this, I developed a really strong interest in strength and conditioning. I recently completed an internship, or I then got this qualification. I've networked with this person. You want to give that story in 60 to say 90 seconds, where you concisely break down the last few years of your career, what you've learned, what you've developed. What you don't want to do is go into generic information. So speaking about the team you support, films, music, general hobbies that you have. At this stage of the interview and the process, the employer doesn't care about this. Unless they explicitly ask that, they don't really care. It's all about the stuff you have in relation to the job. Secondly, this one can really slip you up. What do you know about us? Tell us what you know about our company. So what you need to do is spend time researching the company. What you can't do is blag the answer. People can spot this blag a mile off. So let's say, for me, I'm going for a job at the University of Birmingham. I'm going for a lecturing position. And the way I could put it properly would be, well, I've looked on your website, I've learned a lot about you recently, and what I really like about you is, and I give my examples. As a lecturer, it would be the teaching quality, the way they treat the students. So think about the job you're into and the company you're going for. What's good about them? What do you like about them? What you don't want to do is be too generic. You're on the spot, you haven't prepared, so you give a bit of a bullshit generic answer. Well, yeah, Birmingham was a nice place. I've been there a couple of times. Yeah, the campus looks good. Yeah, I've been to a few pubs. They look pretty decent. You start going down that generic route, it shows you're not prepared, and it's a really poor answer. So what should you research before the interview? Firstly, a simple way of doing it is just going on the About Us. You go on pretty much any website of a company, and it should have About Us in the top corner. Click on that and learn as much as you can. Secondly, facilities, software, equipment, whatever's relevant to the job. Again, go on the website, you'll find that information. You want to know about the staff, particularly the panel. You need to know who the panel are. Staff profiles are obviously a good starting point, but you can also use things like Twitter, LinkedIn. You don't want to come across as a stalker. You don't want to reference something you saw in their Twitter 6 months ago, but just having a general feel for what they're interested in, their background, will definitely help. And finally, look at the achievements of the company as well. This is a chance for you in this answer to praise the company, to use a little bit of charm and awareness. So what you want to do is go on Google, look at the news section on Google, or even just the About Us will typically say stuff about achievements as well. Pick up on that, highlight you know about this, and it'll really impress the panel. Next question, some of the preparation for this is quite similar to the previous question. Why do you want to work here? Why have you chosen this place and not another place? So what you want to do again, research the company. Very importantly, find common interests that you have with this company. And whilst this is really common in your head, I need a job. We all think that when we're going for a job and you get asked that question, I need the money, I need to pay my mortgage, I need to pay my rent. You don't really want to say that so clearly. So to give you an example again, if I was going for a job as strength and conditioning coach, What I'd say is, well, I want to work for you because your philosophy towards the physical, personal development of players really resonates with me. I've read up about what you do, I've watched some YouTube videos, I listened to a podcast, one of your staff members. What you do really fits into what I like. What you don't want to do is just come across as that fan or give that generic answer again. Well, it's a big club, it's a good experience for me. If you say this just in isolation, it sounds really poor. You can certainly use that sentence within your answer, but if you just focus on stuff like this without really knowing about the company and their philosophy, the answer's not as strong. And the interview's a two-way street. There needs to be that mutual interest in values, philosophy, because employers are looking for people that essentially buy into that philosophy and the values that company has. And also, you could be very well qualified, you get to the interview, but then you realize you actually disagree on certain philosophies or values. It's not always a bad thing. It works both ways. You're being interviewed, but you're interviewing them as well. You've got to ask questions at the end of the interview to make sure you're going to be happy working in that place. The next question is a horrible one, in my opinion. What is your biggest weakness? Very, very difficult to answer. I have struggled with this one in the past. And what I'd say is, give an example of a weakness that you've recently identified, but really spell out how you're working on improving. What you don't want to do is give that example, that stereotypical answer where people try and look good by saying, well, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, or yeah, I work too hard. It sounds crap. So let's go through some examples again. So let's say I was going for a PhD and it's quantitative and qualitative research method as part of that PhD. So I might say, well, I think my biggest weakness is actually the qualitative side of statistics. But I have just enrolled in a course and I'm actually reading a book at the minute called Name Drop the Book, Name Drop the Author. And that's really helped me so far. It's still a weakness, but I am working on it. So you can see what I've done here. I've been open about having a weakness. You need to be open about that. You can't go back to that bullshit answer of being the hard-working person, the perfectionist. So be open about that. But as I've already said, give those examples of how you try and improve that. A course, a book, a podcast, whatever it is that's helping you, mention it. Number 5 out of 6 questions. Tell us about a time where you had to work in a team or as an individual. This is very, very common across so many different jobs. So what you need to do is give a clear example, but you need to elaborate on a story as well. So what was the outcome of working in a team? What was the successful outcome of working in a team or as an individual? Where people go wrong is just giving a very vague example where they don't really elaborate and talk about the outcome. So examples again, if you work in a team and you want to give examples, I draw back on your experience from group projects. This is why if you're an undergraduate student now, take the lead in group projects. Don't just sit in the background for all those projects throughout the 3 or 4 years you're at university. Take the lead because you're going to need examples in a few years' time at interviews. And also when you go out on placements, again, take the lead, take the initiative. If you're working with other interns on a project or you're working with other members of staff, then yeah, take the lead. It's going to look really good in the future when you give these examples. And if you're working individually, your dissertation, if you haven't got that far yet, then think about individual projects you have to at university. How do you cope with that on your own? And again, on placement, you don't always do stuff as a team. On placement, you might have to bite the bullet and start doing stuff by yourself as you get more trust from the employer. What did you do? What was the outcome? Final question is typically at the end of the interview or towards the end of it. What is your 5-year plan or your 1-year plan? Now, if you're going for a retail job, a supermarket, or a bar job, you're probably not going to get asked this sort of question. But for a career graduate position, employers want to know this sort of stuff. So you need to provide clear, concise objectives that make you a stronger asset to the organization. What you don't want to do is come across as really passive. I'm not saying you have to have your whole future mapped out, but if you're a person that says, well, I'll go with the flow and see what happens, you can't say that in the interview. It looks really poor if you're not at least thinking about it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be concrete, but have some ideas. So what should you focus on in this area? Well, I've looked at the desirable criteria on the advert. So when you get to the interview, before you go into it, look at the advert again. There are certain parts of the criteria you don't have yet. You need to focus on that stuff and really go for it. So it could be some additional qualifications that they want. So in sports science, you've got UKSCA accreditation, BASES accreditation, and plenty of others. It could be expertise as well. You're a graduate. You're not expected to know everything yet. You never will in reality, but there could be certain software, there could be certain qualities that the job's looking for that maybe you're a bit weak on right now. So you'd say, well, I want that promotion in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. I understand I need to do X, Y, and Z in order to achieve that. So from these 6 questions, I'm going to go through the key messages now to finish off. Firstly, research the company. You've got to spend a lot of time on Google and on that company website to fully understand the values, the philosophy of this company. Secondly, identify these gaps. Where do you fit in? What's the mutual areas that you have between yourself and this company that makes you stand out from the other candidates? You need to give examples. So when you're telling these stories, when you're answering these questions, give examples of your own successful outcomes. And finally, have ideas for the future. You need these ideas. You need to be very confident in what you want to do and have some sort of plan mapped out. That's going to make you a really good graduate, give you a better chance getting the job that you want. Okay, so that was my short video on 6 job interview questions that every student should be prepared for. If you'd like to keep up to date, please subscribe to the channel. And if you have any further questions you'd like to discuss, please contact me on Instagram at Sports Science Hacks. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.